Administrative Affairs report from Ken Goetch.
Yes, so I'll start off with the quick overview of the budget. As you know, as we come to the close of this fiscal year, we've got another month and a half to go. We're happy to report that we expect to end this year with a balanced position, despite the fact that we haven't received our full state payment. So it's good news if we do receive it, but if we don't, we should end this year up in a good position. But we're here today because of this meeting. We're going to be requesting the board to give us permission to publish a notice of our budget for next year in the newspaper and to make that budget available to the public. As we did last year, we made sure each of our campus libraries had the document available for public inspection. We also posted it on our website, and we made the document available to some of the libraries around Lake County. We'll also be requesting that we hold a public hearing on the budget at the June 27th meeting, and then we'll also be asking the board to adopt the budget at that meeting as well. And then after the board adopts the budget, we then have to file our legal budget with the state and also a copy with Lake County. In terms of our budget itself, basically we're almost 64% local revenues. Tuition make up about a third, but a little less than 30% of our budget, with the remaining coming from the state and some other sources of revenue. Property taxes being our largest component. This year's budget assumes a 2.1% increase, or about $1.5 million coming from property taxes. And this would be kind of an idea if the state was to pass property tax freeze legislation. This would be the kind of number that would be impacting our budget going forward. This is about $1 million to $1.5 million. We know this number does include some new property, so that typically would be allowed to be levied, but we just know a big portion of this new number is coming from existing properties, so any freeze legislation would affect that. State funding, we're assuming next year that we're going to get about 80% of the state's funds, or about $6.5 million. Dr. Weber had mentioned that we know the governor's budget had recommended that we receive about 85%, and it looks like the bill in the Senate is upwards of 90%. So we know this assumption is not wrong, but at the same time, we don't know what's going to emerge from the state. But that is our assumption right now. And then from tuition, we are projecting a 1.3% enrollment decline, though Dr. Weber did mention the fall numbers are looking positive, though it is early. And we know that for every 1% enrollment increase, we would pick up about $250,000 in additional revenues. So we have some upside protection there. And then in terms of expending, we know a big part of our spending comes from salaries and employee benefits. Over 70% of the budget comes from that category. And with a $105 million operating budget that we'll be recommending, this will be a 2.5% increase from the prior operating budget. We know personnel expenditures is only increasing by 1% from the prior year. And a big part of that is because of health insurance. This year is only growing at about 1.6% as compared to the national average of about 8.5%. So that's a real positive trend for us. And that non-personnel expenditures in this budget we're projecting to grow about 1%. We did build a large contingency into this year's budget because of the state funding uncertainty. We've got an additional $1 million of budgetary contingency set aside. The state funding doesn't come through, so we've gave ourselves some cushion there. And then finally, the budget funds debt service for the master plan. Here's a look at salaries based on the board's action tonight and adopting a budget. We're assuming a 3% increase in non-bargained for salaries. We know that's consistent with our various labor unit agreements, and you can see what that impact is on the budget. We're also benefiting in this year's budget from retirements. A number of expensive staff are retiring to be replaced by less expensive staff. So the net effect of the prior year salary budget versus the current year budget salary, you can see that's the 1% I mentioned earlier. And then this slide here shows our benefit health insurance cost changes last year or this current year to next year. You can see that's fairly flat as well. In terms of some positive information, the board chairman had asked me to present our workers' compensation program. With the combination of working with our risk manager, our insurance agency, HR, facilities and safety, and our third-party administrator, we've done a really strong job of controlling our claim costs. And over a 7-year period, that saved the college $2.4 million versus if we had an insured program. And what that looks like on an annual basis, on this chart you can see this last fiscal year we saved $421,000. So you can see that a healthy functioning program is one example where the administration has worked hard to help control costs and save money. And then our bottom line is our operating balance. As a college, we know when this year with a balanced budget, we'll still maintain a very high fund balance ratio of 30%, despite the board's target of 25%. And we know within that balance, we have our $2 million reserve for economic uncertainty. If we had to rely on it, it's there for us to use. In terms of our capital budget this year, for next year, there's about $17.7 million in various major capital projects. A small portion of the Lakeshore project will be spent this year and the next year. $16 million in master plan projects and a little under $1 million in deferred maintenance work. And then this final slide kind of summarizes some of the other funds that are part of our budget. When you move outside the operating funds, we have an auxiliary enterprise fund, a debt service fund. Grants budget is about $22 to $23 million, and a liability fund of about $755,000. As you all know, our key budget risks for next year: enrollment trends, state aid, property tax freeze legislation, how well our auxiliary funds do, and finally any potential pending pension legislation. And with that, any questions on our budget introduction?
Thank you. The fund balance is currently 30%, and our board policy has a sort of a floor of 25%. What does that do to our bond rating?
It's what's been allowing us to maintain a AAA bond rating as a
Down to
college.
25%?
At 38%, it's certainly helping us at that higher level. If we were to go down to 25%, could we still maintain a AAA rating? I wouldn't be surprised. I think what would be more jeopardizing us is uncertainty in state funding. So us maintaining a slightly higher balance is giving us a little extra insurance.
We also have a working cash fund that adds to that, so that's all.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And where did the additional dollars come from for the contingency?
The board had a surplus 2 years ago, and they set some of the surplus aside for a reserve for uncertainty. Part of it went to the capital projects, part of it went to a reserve, and $1 million was set aside to fund the college scholarship promise program.
Thank you.
Any other questions?